Welcome back to everybody here for CCP's second day of CCP's 11th CEO Investor Forum. I'm Daryl Brewster. I'm the CEO of Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose. We heard from a number of CEOs yesterday and a few more today, sharing their sustainable long-term business and integrated long-term business plans about how they're going to create value in this fairly crazy, some people call it VUCA world, with all the volatility that's out there in geopolitical issues, cultural issues, economic issues, and well. And I am really delighted to start off today's program with Mark Schneider, the CEO of Nestle, the world's largest food company. I've spent a lot of my career in food company. I'm a former CEO myself. We always had trouble when we competed against Nestle, but it's great to see them continue to drive and grow. And I was glad to have my cup of Nespresso this morning. So with that, I'll introduce Mark Schneider to share Nestle's sustainable business plans. Mark spent a few years ago, he shared his plans as well, and it'll be great to get an update on those as Nestle looks to continue to drive sustainable value by meeting the needs of the people and the planet through its innovation and technology. Mark.
Thank you, Daryl, for the kind introduction, and to all the CCP participants, great to be back, and we appreciate your interest. And as Daryl said, it's a VUCA world out there, and obviously for all of us, day-to-day management responding to day-to-day challenges is part of our daily playbook. But over and above that, we should never lose sight of some of the longer-term problems and opportunities, and bake them into our strategy, devote enough time and energy to them to take full advantage of the opportunities offered by the future, and handle small long-term problems before they become big long-term problems. And that is part of the story I would like to share with you today as we focus here on the long-term strategy, which we summarize with the two statements here: good for you and good for the planet. Moving to the next slide, you see here Nestle in a nutshell, the geographic profile of the company, and then also how it breaks down into our key categories, and then some headline numbers like 275,000 employees, an R&D spend of about 1.7 billion Swiss francs, 23 R&D locations around the world, and almost 350 factories. So massive company. As you can see, the whole emphasis here on R&D spend and R&D locations. Innovation has always been part of our lifeblood, and something that we believe keeps products in the food and beverage industry vibrant and interesting, and brings brands to their full potential. And so this is something that will come back frequently during this presentation. Now, in a nutshell, and across all the different categories and brands that we represent, what is our strategy? We're focusing on food and beverages as core. The last time I presented in 2019, we were just in the middle of focusing our strategy. At the time, we still owned the skin health business, and we've divested that since, and now give food and beverages our full attention. As you draw a giant matrix around the world between all these categories we serve, and then the close to 190 markets we're in, there's obviously still plenty of white space that we can fill in order to grow the business. And this includes Nestle Health Science, where we want to bring nutritional health products as one additional growth platform. And we've seen good success in building this business from less than a 2 billion Swiss franc run rate in 2017 to more than 6 billion now. Some of the core aspects of the products we're looking for: clearly, we want to serve modern time-constrained consumers. So clearly, if you cooked everything from scratch, you probably wouldn't have a lot of need for Nestle products, but you would certainly spend a lot of time in the kitchen preparing all of your meals. Our sweet spot is where we bring the convenience and then the need for healthy, delicious, and convenient products together. And that's essentially what we're after. We are very much focused on differentiated premium innovations. Nespresso, one example that was mentioned by Daryl, but many others. We're also, as part of our presence in emerging markets, very much focused on affordable, high-quality, nutritious products. And as I will explain later in the presentation, we also do have a very far-reaching sustainability agenda. This is all part of our creating shared value approach to business, where we believe in order to be long-term successful, businesses need to contribute to the success and sustainability of societies around them. And that approach and that mindset to doing business is something that's a hallmark of Nestle. So what I'd like to focus on in particular is these two aspects of our strategy: good for you, where we summarize our nutritional aspirations, and then good for the planet, where, of course, this is the home for all of our sustainability goals. So on good for you, we've just made some announcements earlier this year. And a key announcement was that we were the first global food company to rank our entire global portfolio on a public, so non-Nestle system, nutritional system, and that's the Australian government Health Star rating. And we're basically giving people a complete breakdown of our portfolio. And you see that here in these four categories: occasional indulgence, mindful enjoyment, daily goodness, and specialized nutrition. So generally, a Health Star rating of 3.5 or greater is seen as healthy products. And then below 3.5, you have the mindful enjoyment between 1.5 and 3. And the occasional indulgence, those are products with a Health Star rating of less than 1.5. And so you see that we cover the full spectrum here. And I think this is part of the Nestle heritage, where, going back to our roots, we started, of course, on a very nutritious product, and that is infant nutrition. But we also stand for enjoyment-related food categories, such as chocolate, which I know many consumers fondly remember and enjoy every day. And what we announced earlier this year is that rather than looking at the totality of food through one angle only, such as only health or only enjoyment, we really want to be committed to that full spectrum. And yes, we want to grow and increase the healthy part that is greater than 3.5 HSR. But we are also committed to the enjoyment-related part, albeit under the governance of a framework which we call responsible consumption. And responsible consumption to me means to always have a leading marketing to children policy. So for those members of society that cannot make their own fully educated food choices yet, to be sure that you don't lure them into buying a product that may not be the right for them. And along with one peer, I think we have one of the strictest standards here in the industry, and have now implemented a full 0 to 16 absence of marketing to children. And then for everyone who can make an educated choice, it is about allowing them to do that. And so front of pack guidance, portion guidance, complete transparency on what's in the product, and any helpful hint on what a healthy daily intake is, those are things that we aspire to, and that we will roll out on a global basis over the next few years. And so we believe that with this dual focus, on the one hand, making the healthy products healthier, but then on the other hand, staying committed to enjoyment-related products as long as they are consumed responsibly, that this is the best way to tackle this apparent contradiction between health and enjoyment in nutrition. Because done right, we believe it is not a contradiction. In fact, it's the reality of how most of us consume food every day. On the right-hand side, you see a particular focus of ours going forward, and that is the focus on healthy aging. So as I mentioned earlier, the company was founded on infant nutrition products, and this was in the 1860s at a time of serious infant mortality problems around the world. And so clearly, based on this significant innovation, the company grew very fast at the time. But when you look at today's reality, birth rates around the world are in long-term secular decline. Population growth is slowing, and at some point in the next few decades will probably level off. But then when you look at the demographics in most countries, clearly older strata are increasing quite significantly. And these people do have a strong interest in healthy aging. They do have an interest in longer productive years and years in good health. And so nutrition can make significant contributions towards that goal. And we believe that these are also consumers that have the either accumulated savings or the income to afford higher quality premiumized products. And so we believe that here is a very valuable way to make a public health contribution with consumers that also have the purchasing power to drive above par growth. So clearly in different categories, whether it's Nestle Health Science, in our dairy category and many others, we're trying to bring products to the market and prioritize investments that work towards healthy aging. Now, on the good for the planet side, we do have several key landmark initiatives. You see 3 of them listed here. So starting from left to right, clearly our greenhouse gas reduction efforts have found wide acclaim with the investing public, with NGOs and governments around the world, and also I think getting more and more recognition among our consumers. We did sign up to the Science Based Targets initiative in 2019. We presented at the end of 2020 a detailed roadmap on how to get to net zero by 2050. I'll explain later that this is on a full scope 3, so going all the way to the agricultural commodities. And I'll show you that while it's a very significant, challenging task, we're making very good progress towards it. At the center of the slide, packaging sustainability, so in particular avoiding the spillage of plastic in the environment, that is another key landmark initiative. And one core sub-goal among a number of different packaging-related goals is the 30% reduction in virgin plastics by 2025. This is compared to the 2018 baseline, and we're making good progress towards that as well. And then supply chain, clearly, the entire industry in 2010 had set out to work towards deforestation-free on the major agricultural commodities. The entire industry wanted to be there 100% by 2020. It turned out that this was a very aggressive target and one that no one was able to meet. Along with one other company, we were able to get into the 90s by 2020. And then rather than giving up on the rest, we also set up some additional goals here to get as close as possible to 100% at the latest by 2025. You're seeing we're already very, very close to it. And compared to some other companies that are not even publishing the percentage of deforestation-free products or that are stuck somewhere in the 20s, 30s, or 40s, I think we have made significantly good on our promise here to become deforestation-free within a very foreseeable time frame. Deforestation-free is very important to me because when you think about our net zero target, clearly trying to reforest and trying to do all sorts of good things down the road while there's still a lot of damage being done to the climate on planet Earth through deforestation, to me, does not make a lot of sense. It's like a hole beneath the waterline for a ship where, you may want to lose the water, but, new water is pouring in. And so absolutely driving towards deforestation-free products is one of the key baselines that's necessary in order to do something good for our climate around the world. So here you see the description on the next slide on what our net zero target involves. It's on a full scope 3, so direct operations, indirect operations, and most notably the scope 3, and that's the value chain. And I think this is the key difference here, and also the key question I would advise you to ask when you see companies' net zero commitments, whether it is on a full scope 3 or whether it only includes scopes 1 and 2. For a food and beverage company, the main part of the challenge, so in our case, more than 70% lies in the value chain. So clearly, if tomorrow everything we do in our direct and indirect operations was already down to zero, we would still have essentially more of 2/3 of the problem unsolved. And hence, this is where you have to do incredibly detailed on-the-ground work and work with farmers hand in hand, work with agricultural supply companies hand in hand to make things happen. This is incredibly detailed work that will take time, and that also very often on initiatives needs lead time, and hence we left ourselves that space all the way through 2050. Now, it's important under the Science Based Targets initiative that you also have intermediate goals. The first intermediate goal we have is -20% by 2025, -50% by 2030. So you can measure and track our progress year after year. And of course, we're disclosing these numbers, and they're also reviewed by our auditors, EY. So key initiative, it will certainly, among our various ESG initiatives, be the most expensive one. But let me say, from a societal point of view, this is probably also the one that's the most defining for our times. And it's not about the survival of the planet. The planet will survive, but clearly, if we don't get the climate situation under control, it's a question of how we want to live here. It's a question of, how we want to rise, how we want to cope with rising sea levels, for example, or melting glaciers, and a climate that becomes more and more variable. And so if we don't get it under control, there's just going to be a whole lot of secondary and tertiary societal costs that will burden all of us, that will make life harder. And so making our contribution towards this generational goal, to me, is quite important, and also one that I believe over time will gain more and more consumer traction and recognition. As part of this, and as part of working with the supply chain, regenerative agriculture has emerged as a key strategy to make this happen. So fostering biodiversity, fostering healthy soils, fostering intact water cycles, and also integrating livestock into the overall agricultural picture in a good way. All of these are ways in which farmers can contribute to lower greenhouse gas emissions. So this is incredibly detailed work where we're dealing with 600,000, 700,000 farmers around the world in a direct way, and trying to work with them as part of what we call the just transition. We know there's very exciting technologies out there available today to make this happen. So we don't need to wait for major developments down the road to make it happen. It's more about convincing the farmers and helping them to apply these technologies, and also shoulder some of the upfront effort that it takes. In many personal meetings with farmers on the ground, what I saw is that there's readiness to do this, but obviously people don't want to lose their farms, they don't want to lose their livelihoods. And so helping them through this from a technology and financial point of view is one of our key objectives. We call that whole process a just transition, because we found that in many commodities, it takes additional sustained efforts over a number of years before you then see the benefits. But then it comes back as something that is much more easy on the climate, and at the same time gives the farmers the same results as before. And so helping them through these difficult years is essentially part of our just transition efforts. Now, as you can imagine, as a private company, for all of these efforts, we also need to find good ways to communicate this to consumers. And you're seeing here a few examples on climate action, human rights, and regenerative agriculture. And this is still a nascent area where I think all of us as marketing companies, we're still having to learn to master a new language on how to talk to consumers, where you want to describe the problem and what the company does in very proper, factually correct ways. At the same time, you need to be short, you need to be crisp, because product packagings and media messages, all of them only have limited attention span. And it's about essentially getting a message across in 2 seconds, or at least using the 2 seconds to earn the next 2 seconds. And so you have to be crisp and to the point. And of course, all of this happens under the watchful eyes of regulators and the public, who wants to be sure that there is no greenwashing here, and that you're staying exactly on the truth. And so between the facts, the limited attention span of consumers, and the limited real estate that a product package offers, this is a key challenge, and one where I think the entire industry is learning, and our marketeers are very focused on that to make that happen. The climate action is integrated into our longer-term strategy in many ways, because it's like R&D, one of these forward-looking expenses where you need to free up resources now, invest them into the right areas, then allow some lead time for these actions to take effect, and then, of course, communicate these efforts in the proper way to consumers and other constituents around the world, and then over time harvest the benefits from that, hopefully in the form of increased recognition and growth. And so done right, it becomes a flywheel, just like R&D becomes a flywheel. But of course, it is one that we're still developing, and one that, as I mentioned, the language and how to communicate to consumers and exactly how to measure progress in this area, all of this is still under development, and obviously a lot less established than, for example, your classic straightforward product innovation. Yet we're very committed to it because we see it as a part of future-proofing our company. When it comes to the governance, obviously, that's also a very interesting management question, and one that is also still taking shape. How to oversee significant investments like this in a massive global company. You're seeing here the three major constituents that we have established. So at the board level, we have a sustainability committee. It says here that ours was only established 2021. That is correct, as a dedicated sustainability committee. Before that, we already had one, but it had the additional task of nominations. And we felt that sustainability in and for itself was so important that it required its own focused committee, and hence we set that up and split nominations from sustainability in 2021. And I think it's been a very good move that really heightened the level of the board debate quite a bit. Inside the company, at the level of the executive committee, we have an ESG council where the various people that contribute to our ESG efforts come together. So this was established in 2020. And as you can imagine, a strong, dedicated effort requires contributions from different functions inside the company. So this could be R&D on the packaging side. It could be our operations when it comes to working with the agriculture community around the world, or it could be the marketing front when it comes to communicating the benefits of all of this to our consumers. And then we also, as part of the connection of the company to our external key opinion leaders and NGOs around the world, we have established a long time ago in 2009 a Creating Shared Value Council, where we invite outside experts to discuss with us and basically make sure that it's not only our internal worldview on sustainability matters, but that we're keeping abreast of current developments, current priorities, and also have the chance to bounce some key ideas and initiatives off that group to see how it resonates, and to basically have a reality check in everything we do in this area. On the board, clearly, over the last years, the amount of attention, aside from the sustainability, the amount of attention that sustainability matters are getting has definitely increased. And linking that with the massive investments and the justification of these investments, I think that is an area that now gets a lot more time and effort than in the past. And so I think it's important to have a set of diverse backgrounds and skills on the board. And so you see here the skill grid of our board of directors. And I think it is well diversified, and it makes sure that from a skills and functional and also geographic and cultural point of view, different viewpoints come to the table so that you end up with balanced global decisions that make sense for the entire corporation. Turning to the financial performance, I think we have always described ourselves as a patient capital compounding stock, one that delivers superior value over long periods of time through the patient art of compounding. And I think this was the essence of the long-standing Nestle model, where we're striving for very consistent mid-single-digit organic growth, and then steady, modest improvements in the underlying profitability as scale advantages with growth kick in. And I think you see this in the long-term performance of the stock, the long-term commitment to a stable or rising dividend. We're one of the dividend aristocrats with more than 25 years of consecutive dividend increases under our belt. And in fact, when it comes to a stable or increasing dividend, it's been 60+ years that we've been able to meet that standard. And then in addition to the dividend, we also have shared significant amounts of money with our shareholders through share buybacks over the recent years. We've seen that across the full spectrum of shareholders, some are quite interested in share buybacks as a way of returning cash. Others are quite interested in a dividend as a source of regular income without having to sell the underlying share. And so clearly we want to be sure that both shareholder groups are happy with the way that we're sharing our returns. And coming close to the end of the presentation, you see here as part of an investor day we held in Barcelona last year, our value creation model, key aspects and 2025 targets. You see that commitment to mid-single-digit growth, an underlying trading operating profit margin in the band of 17.5% to 18.5%. And then also free cash flow is very important to us, that trends to 12% of sales over time. And when we meet all of that, we should be able to consistently deliver annual underlying earnings per share growth in the range of 6 to 10%. Capital discipline and also a sound financial policy when it comes to balance sheet aspects is very important to us on the way towards that. And underlying all of that, of course, is the mindset that I described earlier, trying to create value for our shareholders, but also for the broader society around us. And that's a deeply held conviction here at the company and the governance structures of the company. And that brings me to the end. So clearly, very close to the purpose of the company is this unlock of the power of food, that we saw so strongly with the first modern day child nutrition and the difference it made to people's lives. We applied that to many other categories around the world. Given that food and agriculture stands for such a big part of the environmental burden around the world, doing it with the least possible environmental footprint is very important to us. So protecting and enhancing the environment has been very long-standing priority of the firm. And done right, we believe that this can generate significant value to our shareholders and the public at large. And with that, looking forward to any questions.
Thank you, Mark. That was outstanding, and in a concise time frame, put together the fairly complex Nestle story as the world's biggest food company, and real clarity around what you're looking to do from a consumer standpoint, from the business standpoint, as well as from a planet perspective. So thanks for that. We have a number of questions that have come in to kind of share some in depth on those areas. First is you talked a lot about sustainability and how you're thinking about that across the scopes. What are your key sustainability priorities? And given everything else going on, how do you ensure you don't lose focus on those?
Yeah, so it's a very important question because as a large company with a presence in so many parts of the world, what you cannot do is simply say, here is a worthy societal goal that I simply don't cater to. I mean, that's not an option. So on the fringes, even among the less important ones, you have to be receptive, you have to listen, and you have to basically work with people and see what's important to them. And yet at the same time, you're right, it's important not to lose focus on the real big defining initiatives where most of the spending goes into and where clearly the company will be judged over time. So for us, the big four are greenhouse gas reduction, sustainable packaging, water, protecting water as a natural resource, and then also human rights in everything we do, and in particular in our supply chain. So those are the big four where we know we don't want to miss, we want to lead, we want to really put in the best effort we can around the world. But over and above that, you always have to have an open ear to what is important to a certain community around the world that you interface with, because otherwise you're just not seen as open and receptive to them.
Great. And how do you ensure the company keeps focus on those?
Well, it's a lot of internal communications. I think also externally, when it comes to the metrics that you pick, that you report on, that helps to provide clarity. So clearly, as we started now with Ernst & Young reviewed external data, you're very selective that you pick the data points that are strongly in support of these top four priorities. And then also you have to align some of the internal incentive systems. So the part that relates to ESG is then with priority geared towards these top four initiatives.
Terrific. Now that record, report, and reward, right? As you bring the group.
Absolutely.
How do you align? There's some pushback about sustainability and financial metrics. How do you align those performance goals and ensure you can deliver on both and rather than either or?
Yeah. So to me, it's very clear that over time you need to have a commercial case. So with the kind of spending we're talking about here, you're reaching levels where it cannot just be a de minimis, something that you do on the side. So you need to have a good commercial framework around it, just like with any other forward-looking spend, whether it's R&D or IT, digital, what have you. And it's important then that you allow yourself a sufficient time horizon, because in the quarter when you spend, yes, every dollar you spend on this is probably a drag on current quarter earnings. But then with a good time frame, I think many of these projects can deliver the necessary returns. And clearly, there are some projects that deliver very fast ones, other that are a bit more backloaded. And having the necessary patience, but then also the milestones to be sure you're getting there, I think this is the way to build confidence inside the company and also with our shareholders that we're doing the right thing.
Right, right. So the portfolio approach and the milestones along the way as you go through that. You mentioned some about how do you get the consumer to kind of understand that sustainability agenda. Any insights that you've gained in what's working and where the challenges are?
Yeah, look, let me say with a good sense of humor here, every time you learn a new language, no matter whether that's French, Chinese, Japanese, or whatever, you make mistakes. And so when you do this, and when I look at some of the various efforts we had on our way internally, there were some that made you simply laugh, okay? But it's also important to approach it with a lighthearted way, because you're literally trying to do something new. In the past, you were talking about how flavorful the coffee was or how creamy the chocolate is. And now you're talking about something new. And so you literally need to find the right wordings for that, and at the same time need to be very mindful of all the laws and rules that govern the space. And as explained before, it needs to be crisp. It needs to be to the point. And so this is one where across all the categories now, we're very focused, having a lot of outside engagement, watching our space, of course, very carefully to get inspired, because you can also copy with pride from others on what works and what doesn't. And so I think we're making good progress here, but I think the entire industry is coming here from basically a fast start.
Sure, sure. No, I think we've heard that from across. We've heard that in the energy industry. We've heard it in communication around tobacco products and others over the last few days. Is just how do you get the language that resonates? And some get it, but other people have been very involved in products over time. And how do you see the benefit in their eyes, not just what you see from your own perspective? So very helpful. Major focus here on good for you. Why good for you, and what does that strategic direction mean for the portfolio?
Yeah, well, it's the essence of what the company is about, and that is to provide good food and beverage, and then defining in specific terms what good means depending on what you're selling, I think is very important. And so to us, I mean, obviously we're very committed to sustainability, but first and foremost, when people pick our products, they pick our products because they want delicious coffee, nutritional products that are advancing their health, and other things that solve a food and beverage problem. And so being focused on that, I think, is the core of what the company stands for. And as I explained, rather than seeing it through one angle only, which would be health, let's look at the reality of how all of us eat and drink. And a good way to reflect on that is just think about what you ate last week, and what did you eat because you needed to have it to survive, and what did you eat because you wanted to have it. And so it's very clear that there's different motivations for food and drink. Let's cover the full spectrum of that in what we offer. But for the part that is enjoyment related, for the part that is not strictly health related, let's also be sure, as explained, that there is a proper framework around it so that we don't promote overconsumption.
Right. No, I love that balanced approach, right? People want these products to be responsible in marketing and yet put more of the emphasis perhaps on some of the good products. The one thing I think we all have a common around the world is we're all getting older. So I like the focus on why healthy aging. Anything else to share on that?
Yeah, so the healthy aging side, it's very important here on the terminology. This is not what you find sometimes in the cosmetics industry, anti-aging, which in my view is a bit of a shallow term, and aging is a fact of life and something you can't avoid. So it's not about that. We do age no matter what we eat. Is also not about what you sometimes see in these extreme longevity circles, like how to live to the age of 150. Because while there's lots of interesting science there, that science is not ready for prime time yet. So it is about, making sure that nutrition supports longer, more productive years. And so this would be supporting optimal body weight, avoiding the loss of lean muscle mass, avoiding micronutrient deficiencies, assuring proper hydration, and also avoiding unnecessary blood sugar spikes. So these are some examples where we believe if you follow these rules with your nutrition, you will do the best you can to avoid premature aging.
Great. And it's been sort of an underestimated or under-focused area within the food world, which tends to be more younger people and younger age, but the growth in the aging population is a great one. When you talked about your sustainability journey to net zero, talked about interim targets. Why were they important in the way you thought about that, your program?
Yeah, and this is a very important question as we're now facing the next round of COP. And I don't know how some of our fellow investors feel, but in past rounds, one of the frustrations I had is, for my taste, there was too much haggling over what a company or government entity would be doing by 2050, 60, or 70. And let's face it, none of the decision makers that make these pronouncements will be around at that time. And as investors, we are very much used to measuring progress through intermediate milestones, and this is how you get credibility. So full transparency, and you pre-declare some intermediate targets, and then you let people judge whether you're on track to meet those targets or not. And that to me is the most honest way to approach a long-term road. And that's why, frankly, from an investor point of view, and especially on the most expensive initiative of greenhouse gas reduction, the two key questions that everyone should ask when they look at a specific company is, number one, do they annually disclose the greenhouse gas emissions? And is that number third-party reviewed, yes or no? Right. And then number two, are they still on their way up or on their way down? Because that shows you whether it's talk about the future or whether actually there's progress happening right now. And in our case, in all modesty, peak carbon is behind us. It was somewhere around 2019. We're already below our 2018 baseline, even though the company has kept growing ever since. And we're on track towards that first intermediate target of minus 20%. And so, frankly, to see those near-term results towards the milestone, to me, is a lot more interesting than exactly what will happen between 2040 and 2050, when you have a whole lot of situations coming in, including new technology, new science, and what have you. So are we doing something now? That's the key question.
No, and I applaud you for kind of leading the way on that. And I think we're hearing that from more and more companies. The 2050 things, when my granddaughter Penelope is running the world, is going to be that's what'll be her. What can we do now to make progress, but within the context of that longer term goals that you all have, which is great. So love to see that, and as well as the assurance as you go through that process, so we can all move on that. Any climate adoption measures you can talk about that you're taking, and how you'll scale those?
Yeah, and see, that's the particular challenge that we have on this full scope 3, where sometimes we get the question, look, I mean, wonderful program, the climate can't wait, why not accelerate everything to 2040 or so? And if we were, let's say, a software company, it would be very easy, because you switch to renewable electricity and a few other measures and you're essentially done. But then we are dealing with these very tangible agricultural commodities, and these are not made in one factory. These are made by hundreds of thousands and millions of people around the world. And literally the conditions for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, they can vary from one field to another, let alone from one continent to another. And so there is no shortcut to this patient field by field, plot by plot work, where you work out the right solution with people, and then also make it interesting to them and financially worthwhile to them to embark on that transition. And that's where we're engaging on. good example is on regenerative farming, to spread out some of these very basic concepts of keeping the ground covered at all times, minimal tillage or no tillage, respecting natural water cycles, shading, intercropping. These are some of the techniques that interestingly apply to virtually all agricultural crops. And so this is what we worked on the ground. And it's good that we have hundreds of agronomists who can actually do that field work with the farmers, who very often just need a person to talk to. And this is not, if you just tell them do it, it's not good enough. You have to hold the hand and do it with them.
No, I think it's I mean, great progress on scope 1 and 2. Scope 3 in agriculture and food products is very, very difficult because there's no scale. You have scale in the other areas. This is, as you say, farm by farm, and talk about being on the ground as you do that. But it's good to see that Nestle is out there helping and supporting each of the farmers you're asking them also to change their lives. And how can you help to communicate the way they've been doing it for years? So it's a great challenge, and great to see Nestle leading the way on that. Final question here. We've talked about sort of that human side on that, the role of technology, the digitization. We're hearing a lot about AI. How is Nestle thinking about that as you look for your sustainable business plans?
So definitely AI holds a lot of promise, no matter what function and endeavor in the company you look at. And I think here also, when it comes to finding these specific solutions that would work in a given environment, I think this is where AI can really help us point the way, because what I see where AI is inherently superior to the human mind is when you have lots of data inputs and where minor variations of how they relate to each other may drive the outcome. AI detects patterns and promising pathways so much faster than we would do. And then, of course, you verify what you're seeing. So it's not that there's no human checks and balances, but when you bring it together, you have what I call faster and better decisions. This is clearly where we believe in economy, it's just like in so many other fields of research and development, AI will be a tremendous enabler, no question about it.
Great. Mark, thank you so much. Your communication in a concise way, clear program and plan of what Nestle's purpose is, how it's thinking about its financial metrics, and it's really focused on driving efforts is really been terrific. So thank you so much for your presentation, for the preparation of that, and for the progress you as Nestle and the world's leading food company is making. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me again on the Investor Forum. I think you're advancing a very worthwhile cause, and we're super happy to contribute.
Yeah, as we say, many of us are in a long cycle business and a short cycle world. So it's important that we balance those out here to make progress. So thank you, Mark.
Absolutely.
And thanks to all in Vivek. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.